Hi everyone, I'm Réka Bakos. I'm delighted to be here. I'm based in Hungary in a small town called Tata, but I have connections to Pittsburgh because my great-grandparents emigrated here around the turn of the century, and they stayed here for over a decade, and then they returned to Hungary, and that's how our family is based in Hungary. And Kati asked me, to tell you a few words about how this whole initiative started. It started with the genealogy Facebook group. So I have been researching my roots for 5 years now, and in a Hungarian genealogy group, I bumped into a gentleman called János Szabon, who posted a story about a great-grandfather who took the ship, traveled to the US, worked here several years, and then returned to Hungary. And then I commented on his post, like, that's my story. So, and then we started talking, and I helped him researching, and it turned out that his great-grandfather on his second trip also came to Pittsburgh, and as my great-grandfather and his great-grandfather also had the Reformed faith, most probably they went to the exact same church here in Hazelwood, like, 100+ years ago, which is unbelievable. So it was János's idea to start a Facebook group, which you can see on the top. We had 250 members on the very first day joining, and many of them are our authors here today. And now we have close to 900 participants. And our purpose with the group was to share stories, to share old photos, which are usually stored away in drawers and not really seeing the daylight. So bring them out, share it with the community, and also, inspire storytelling, because if we don't tell these stories, they will be forgotten. From the very first day on, beautiful, touching, moving, really sometimes sad stories were emerging, and you can see a few of them up here. And then it was Anna's idea to actually not just share them within the group, but also making it available to the broader audience.
I'm a linguist, I'm a sociolinguist working in Hungary, but in the 1990s, I actually was a graduate student here at the University of Pittsburgh. And very early on, actually through Kati, I found my way to the Hungarian American community and started going to the events. And then I ended up actually writing my master's thesis on how American Hungarians in McKeesport, Pennsylvania speak Hungarian. In 1996, I moved back to Hungary, and I taught for, ever since then at the University of Szeged. And then 5 years ago, I also started doing genealogical research into my father's side of the family. And basically, with this book, my professional life and my hobby sort of came together, and it's, being a person in humanities and social sciences, it seemed completely obvious to me that all of these wonderful stories that were surfacing in this group need to be written down and preserved in a book. We have two of our friends and colleagues who were instrumental in getting the book together. Dr. Zoltán Dragon, who is my colleague at the University of Szeged, and he's one of the two editors of the Americana e-journal and Americana e-book series. When the book idea came up in the conversation with Réka, he was the first person I thought of. After Réka and I decided to do the book, about 4 hours later we had a publisher, because all I had to do is ask Zoltán, and he was very, very open to the idea.
And the other gentleman on the slide is János Pataki. He was our graphic designer, so you will see the cover of the book and also the inside. It's filled with beautiful photos, graphics, and that's thanks to him.
Thank you both. So I'm going to ask a question about why personal history.
Yes, so the subtitle of our book is Tracing Personal Histories. And personal histories actually is not just a very recent idea that genealogists have when they research their own family's history, but microhistory has been a focus of historical research since the 1970s. And microhistory as a strand of historical research basically focuses on the individual, on the sort of the average person and looks at history from that vantage point rather than from the vantage point of important and powerful people. And microhistory usually describes the sort of historical circumstances and events in the life of one individual or a family or a small village. So basically when we are doing genealogical research, we are doing a little bit of microhistory, and we are contextualizing it in sort of capital H historical contexts.
Yeah, and we wanted to, preserve these personal histories, but what became clear in the last few weeks that these are much more than just personal histories. So if we would have only asked the authors to tell about their ancestors, then it would be personal history, but we realized that we also need to know what happened after. So what happened with the generations that followed. So what you will see in the book is that not just only the story of the immigrants, but also the following generation, whether they stayed in the US or whether they returned to Hungary. And this way, these became really family histories across multiple generations. And then the other thing we realized that these stories are not over, they don't have an end, because the authors are still researching. They want to, share these stories with their kids, with their grandkids, and these stories are still written. So they are really becoming living family chronicles. And if you collect these living family chronicles, that's what's like living community history looks like. So we really hope that with this volume, with the collection of these stories, we can give everyone a taste of how the Hungarian American community lived and continues to live on.
Thank you both so much. Thank you. So my next question is, what is the time frame of the book, and how does it connect to the big immigration waves?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is to represent each of the big immigration waves from Hungary. What you can see on the slide is the time frame of the book spanning more than 100 years. But the first person with the first story was born earlier than that. And as we said, we have multiple generations represented in these stories. So we are spanning 200 years of Hungarian and also US history. On the next slide, you can see the time frame of our stories. The majority of them are connected to the very first wave. So that's where we have most of the stories, but we also have DP stories, we also have 56 stories, and we also have a story, the son of this first vanguard person who actually fought in the US Army and also fought with Buffalo Bill. So there are some really, really interesting stories that are worth reading.